Welcome to the Growth Ventures podcast, the go-to platform for entrepreneurs, innovators, and changemakers. I'm your host, Hamlet Azarian. In this podcast, we delve into the world of business, technology, and innovation. We bring you conversations with industry leaders, disruptors, and visionaries who are shaping the future and making a difference. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a curious listener, join us on the journey of learning and growth. Welcome to the Growth Ventures podcast. And now, let's delve into today's episode. Welcome to the Growth Ventures podcast, where we explore the intricate world of business, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Hamlet Azarian. Today, we are thrilled to have with us Justin Cohen, a multifaceted leader with a rich background ranging from high-energy physics to venture capital. Justin's journey has seen him delve into internet research, lead strategic initiatives in cloud services, and spearhead venture capital endeavors in emerging markets. In this episode, we will traverse Justin's diverse career path, delve into his strategic insights, explore his perspectives on future trends, and reflect on his personal journey and learning. So let's dive into our enriching conversation. Justin, thanks for being here with us today.
Hamlet, it's great to be here. It's good to see you again. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Same here. So Justin, what we'd like to do in the podcast is we take it into different chapters or different stories. And the first chapter I kind of want to start with you is a little bit about your early career and transition. You worked at the University of Maryland, or were part of the University of Maryland high energy physics group program, correct? Or am I understanding that part correctly?
Yeah, that's right. I used to be in high energy particle physics. That was the group that I was in. I was lucky enough to get to work at particle accelerators and study quantum physics in depth.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about that. So tell me a little bit about that experience exactly, and what did you do then, and what did you kind of learn from that experience?
Yeah, actually, it was really exciting. It was an exciting time to be in high energy physics as it relates to sort of the birth of my career in technology. High energy physics was very big in let's say the 60s and 70s as new particles were being discovered and new advances in physics were being made in the quantum world left and right. It was a really terrific time. By the time I got into high energy physics, it became like harder and harder to discover new particles. The energy levels were required were greater and greater, and so things like a place like Fermilab and CERN had to develop a bigger and bigger colliders in order to discover these new particles and confirm what's called the standard model and all of that kind of stuff. But so it actually was kind of getting to be a less and less interesting field and a much more time-consuming to get anywhere field. But at the same time, so interesting, the World Wide Web was developed at CERN.
Interesting.
And because of my involvement in high energy physics, I was right there in the middle of it. And so I had early access to this new technology. And at that time, there was...
How old are you at this time for the listening audience?
So I was about 22, 23, something like that. Yeah, I was in grad school.
Okay.
When this was happening. And my background actually really intersected with that. And since I was 12, when the first personal computers came out, I was really into coding. And I was writing assembly language code, machine language code. And my first computer was a TRS-80 color computer, the first sort of 16-bit computer. It had 8-bit registers, and you can combine some of them to make 16-bit registers. Very nerdy. Right. Tech beginning there, but I was really into all of that stuff. And so when the web came out, we started playing around with it and using it. And there's a lot of innovation in that time period. I really got into it, and that was really kind of the launching pad to my journey into technology, and in fact into business as well.
What did you see at that time? What excited you about the web, I guess, as a 20-something-year-old when you were seeing this kind of develop, this new technology start to develop?
Yeah, two things were really interesting. One is just being able to disseminate information so easily and so interactively. the only real standard prior to that, there was a couple of crazy things that were, new standards that were trying to be made, but the only one that really took was something called FTP, or File Transfer Protocol. And that is not a very interactive, easy to consume way of sharing information. So this was like an amazing new way to share information, to have this level of interactivity that had never been possible before, without actually developing, a full application, which was time consuming and very specific. It required very specific skills. So that's one thing. And then number two, which was really exciting, was how many people therefore got onto the web and sort of altruistically were starting to put things out there that were interesting to them, and just to share general information to the public. I remember there was a real pivot point in my mind when I needed to figure out how to program a new TV remote control, one of these sort of general TV remote controls that could work with a bunch of different brands and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to figure out how to do this? And turns out there's some guy on the web,
Right.
who
Before YouTube, obviously, you can't just YouTube it and watch it, basically.
That's correct. Pre-YouTube, exactly. Well, it's exactly the same thing that we're seeing with YouTube, but it was happening on the web at that time, and I knew, hey, this was going to be an important thing. And during that time, I had a friend who was a software developer as a job. He mentioned to me, this guy Steve. He said, "Hey, I must have been complaining about how slow physics was at that time." And he said, people pay you good money to write software, and that was it. And so that's when I quit physics, and I got a job at the National Institutes of Health, NIH. At their National Library of Medicine, and getting to work on essentially early internet technology, which was the web at that time. So that really sort of catapulted me into that world of technology, and actually got a job doing.
Very cool. So what did you do exactly at the National Institute of Health? So what was your role? What were you doing? I think you said internet research. What did that mean at that time?
Yeah. So the National Institutes of Health, as I'm sure you're aware, they sponsor a ton of research, and a lot of amazing new medical research comes out of there, or is funded by there, and so they have this thing called the National Library of Medicine, and think of it, as this just a giant knowledge base, right, of everything related to medicine. You have publications in oncology, and you have publications in various different medical fields, and they use different terms to explain the same things. And so the National Library of Medicine aims to sort of connect all of that and have a global view on this. And that's great if you could go at that time in the 90s, visit the National Library of Medicine in Bethesda, Maryland. But they wanted this information to be accessible by all, no matter where you were, and no matter what your needs, right? So you could be a small hospital in a rural area that doesn't necessarily have the ability to subscribe to print articles and things like that. So they wanted some way of getting it out there, and the web was the avenue for doing this. And at the time, the web was in its early days. It's a stateless protocol, so there weren't clear ways of how do you search, an index, and how do you have an interaction where you can refine searches, until the development of the Common Gateway Interface, CGI. And so I was right there in the midst of all of that, doing that kind of work, and it was really satisfying work, although a little slow, because it is government work. Right. And it was during that time that I was there at NIH that I was playing around with the Mac OS 6 sound system, which definitely dates me. And I wrote a game for little kids, like little educational software. It's just basically, there's a game called Baby Smash, where you banged on the keys and shapes and sounds would come up on the screen.
Exactly what my daughter does now. She's just banging all the time. So
Yep. So that's a common thing. So I thought, okay, well, let's just allow that to happen and make it, kind of fun for the kids. And also it took control of the screen so it wouldn't mess up any of her files. And I called it a game and released it as what we used to call shareware back then, which just means go ahead and use it. It's free. But if you want to send me something cool. And it kind of went viral. That was, when my eyes opened to, hey, there's a market for educational software. So it went viral in the sense that I received lots of snail mail, email, checks. Steve Wozniak sent me a check.
No way, that's amazing. That's very, very cool.
I still have it, $10. It's in a frame somewhere around here. I wrote him a letter saying, I'm not going to cash your check. I'm sure it's not the first time people haven't cashed this check. And I kind of realized that there was a market for this kind of thing. And so I left NIH to start my first enterprise, which was a game development company, educational software development company. And that was the first real business that I had.
Got it. So you released this shareware, you saw an incredible market where it quickly distributed itself through viral marketing, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready to start something. And this was now the birth of AnyWorld. Is that?
AnyWorld, yeah.
Okay.
It was, yeah. That's the name of that company was based on the game engine. Was an animation engine.
Okay.
It was written in C++ with inline assembly. I wrote the original game engine to that. And then AnyWorld was the object, the C++ object where these any things lived. And I thought, oh, that would be fun to name the company after that.
Very cool.
And so that's correct. Yep. AnyWorld. And that was basically educational software development. And we worked with educational publishers, software publishers, and we did that whole thing. It was an amazing time to be there.
There was nothing really like ed tech then, right? That this was like the birth of that tech era, or
it was early days ed tech. There was a husband and wife team, Bob and Jan Davidson had the Davidson Company, which was the first really massive educational software company. There was Knowledge Adventure, which ended up doing the whole Jumpstart series, which we were a part of. So it was really the early days. And things got really big.
Right.
I remember 3M had an educational software development group or publishing group. And I thought, maybe the market's getting a little too ahead of itself. And so I was able to exit that and start a new company, which was basically just straight software development, for mid-market companies where we would write a SQL backend database. We were Microsoft partners, and we would always have some sort of database backend and a front end user interface. Where
did you sell AnyWorld, or did you just transition into this new company, or what?
So was it? Yeah, there was an asset sale that happened. That essentially facilitated the transition into this, which I had already talked to a couple of people who were hitting me up for work for this kind of work, right. And I had turned them down because I was doing the game development thing, our company, and because there were so many people, again, I thought, hey, the market is speaking to me here. It's telling me there's a big need, so let's jump into that, and that turned out. Pretty well. I was able to grow that company and ended up selling it to a strategic in 2006.
Amazing. So throughout this, you discovered a new technology, obviously the internet. You started playing around with it. You saw a viral component marketing of it. You started a business off of it. You had an exit from that, and then you started a secondary business off of that, and you had another exit off of that. Right? That's a pretty good summary of what so far in your career and your journey.
Yep.
So let's move from your early career experience and transition a little bit into your leadership roles and strategic initiatives that you've undertaken more recently. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're currently doing at Slalom? And for the listening audience, if they don't know what Slalom is, can you explain a little bit about that and a little bit about Slalom Ventures?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to. To connect the past to the present, I would say that I was lucky enough to go on to have a couple of more of these entrepreneurial engagements. The most recent one was a a managed services partner for AWS. And so got very connected into that world. So I was president of that company. I worked with a partner who was CEO of that company. And we ended up exiting to private equity there. That sort of got me, connected to that whole thing got me connected into the VC world and got more active in that. Did some work.
So it was always like from a little one to a bigger one to another bigger one. It seems like your career transition has always been, you found an exit path, you found an opportunity to build something, and then grown it to a certain state, exited out, and then started the next one. Is that a fair assessment?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's always been that's always been an interest of mine, because that's where the knowledge curve is steepest, right? The learning curve, right? Like it's going from that early beginning to getting up to scaling. After that, it's a little bit less interesting. There's always interesting stuff going on for sure. But once you're doing the same thing for a long enough period of time, it slows down. Your learning slows down. So it's always nice to sort of jump into something new. And I've been very, very lucky to do that. I was helping a buddy in Denver when I learned about slalom, and was lucky enough to have a chat with them and get introduced to their global strategy team called S2 Slalom Strategy, and thought, oh, this seems like the most fun possible thing and highly impactful kind of thing to do. And so I became a strategy consultant for Slalom. Slalom is on the larger size, multi-billion a year in revenue consulting company, management consulting company. We're not like Deloitte. We're not that big, but we're a decent size. We have offices around the world, and about 12 to 13,000 consultants. I don't remember the latest number. And we do.
I love how you say we're not that big. We do several $1 billion. We have 12,000 people. We have offices around.
It's hard. It's huge to me, right? But compared to Deloitte, it's maybe not huge.
Right.
So it depends on what circles you hang out in. It's big to me. It's definitely big to me. And it's an amazing company in that not just in the work that we do, which I like to think of as we really do transformative type of work. We're a little different than some of the other folks in that we're not going to just like staff up on AS400 maintenance. That's not our thing. What we want to do is really help our customers transform into sort of next generation companies. And we help them in all ways, from strategy to things like Salesforce implementations. We're big partners with AWS, GCP, Azure, Salesforce, and so we're agnostic in terms of the company and the technology. But all of these technologies that we work with are sort of next generation.
Your clients typically are doing how much annually in revenue, more or less? Are they?
They're pretty enterprise, right? Like, I mean, it runs. So we've worked with startups for sure, and we've worked with mid-market, but I would say we're mid to enterprise, pretty focused.
Got it.
We're a consulting company, right? It's hard for early stage folks to spend the money on consultants. So we understand that, but we do work with startups in a variety of different ways. So I was a strategy consultant at Slalom. Left to do some EIR work, and then came back with the idea of Slalom Ventures.
So all the founders listening in, you've been probably wondering what is going on here in the conversation. This is where I want your ears to perk up a little bit. Okay, so talk to us a little about Slalom Ventures.
Yeah, so Slalom Ventures, it's really exciting actually, and we're at an exciting point in our journey. We've been around only for a little over a year and a half now, figuring things out, figuring out how it works, and I think we're in a really good spot now. Basically, the idea is this: Slalom, as I mentioned, we work with lots of technology partners, including good examples are Tableau and Snowflake. And these are what we call enabling technologies, in the sense that they enable value creation, but they don't do it by themselves. you can install Snowflake on an EC2 instance, for example, and unless you use it, unless you do something or build something with it, doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't create value. So when you have an enabling technology like Snowflake and you combine it with the smart engineers and consultants at Slalom to build something, that's when our customers can actually yield value. That's when they achieve the value there. So it really takes both that enabling technology and our consulting services and our technology and so our technical services to come together to deliver for our customer, right? And so that actually drives quite a bit of
You guys are able to find unique insights. You're able to take something that was maybe analog and digitize it through hardware or through software. And then from that, you're able to analyze and provide new opportunities of growth for customers, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, a good example would be, for Tableau, right? People want dashboards and they want to understand their business. But before that, you need to understand what are your KPIs, right? Like, what are the things that you want to look at, and why do you need to look at them, and what sort of timeframes are should you be looking at, and what insights should you be looking for? So this is a whole data and analytics kind of engagement, which is our bread and butter. We do a ton of that stuff. We're arguably one of the best companies doing that, and that is a prerequisite for building a dashboard in Tableau, right? And then once we have that, then we can actually implement and build that. So our engineers and consultants will actually create that dashboard, put it out right in the right way. But unless you're, working with the correct inputs, then, garbage in, garbage out, right? So it's sort of this symbiotic relationship. And that's terrific and that's great. But over time, any enabling technology sort of saturates the market at some point in time. If you look at it, we're not doing the same number of cloud migrations that we used to do. And that's because, hey, everybody's on the cloud already. And if they're not on the cloud, well, it's a more commoditized kind of capability to move to the cloud. So that means that our services revenue aren't going to be what they used to be in any particular technology as that technology matures and becomes more of a commodity. Therefore, as a company, we always need to be on the lookout for the next generation of enabling technologies that will be our big partners of the future, maybe 5-7 years down the line. That's where Slalom Ventures plays. That's our whole reason for being. Our mission is to find the startups that have those enabling technologies that 5-7 years from now are going to drive 50 million plus in annual services revenue for Slalom so that our and these enabling technologies that our customers are hungry for, and that enabling technology unlocks but requires services in order to fulfill the potential value, right? So that's what we're looking for. So we're looking for on the earlier stage companies, but companies, startups that have sold their product, right? They can't be like just figuring it out right now. They have to have what we call MVP plus, at least, which means they've got their MVP, they've sold it a few times, right? They've got their
How built out is the product now? Like, is it pretty mature, or are they adaptable and they're still building? What phase are they in the product lifecycle?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hamlet. And we're flexible on that, right? And it depends on sometimes these technologies really are new, and you can't have everything figured out, but there's a lot of promise. Right. Ideally, it should be pretty well understood. Of course, everybody has a product roadmap, and there's always version 2, 3, 4, right? But the key is it needs to be saleable in its current form. That is, it needs to be able to deliver value in its current form.
Got it.
Now,
and then do you guys help with the sales into your existing clientele? That's the role you guys facilitate and play in, or?
Yeah, exactly. So when we're trying to figure out who are going to be our next big partners, because that's the whole idea, right? So if we can figure out who's going to be in a next big partner, then we'll actually help fund them, we'll nurture them, we'll roll them out to our customers and really develop this partnership. But how to figure out who is going to be a good partner and who's not going to be a good partner. That is our sort of validation period, or we call it a partner development program. Sometimes we call it a startup accelerator. And here's what we do. Twice a year, we take between 5 and 10 potential startups that have the potential in our view to become big partners. And we put them through this validation period. We call it a startup accelerator, but it's quite different than, let's say, a Y Combinator or Techstars. Those guys are awesome, and they will help you build your business, and they will help you work on your pitch deck. We're not really focused on that. We're focused on one thing: getting you in front of 20, 25 customers, something like that, right? And so this period, which is like 3-4 months for us, we'll take those 5 to 10 startups, and we'll do account planning with them. And we'll say, okay, we'll go through our sales force and say, which of our customers
do we potentially see you're a fit with, basically?
Exactly. And it's a collaborative kind of thing, right? We go with the startup there, and then we essentially get them in front of those companies, which are potential best fits, right? They're hand selected to be the best fits. And, we work with them to sell. And often it means, hey, we're interested in a POC or a pilot, some kind of, test a little bit before you buy the whole thing.
Right.
So here's what we're validating in that period. So we're getting them in front of 20, 25 customers. We're validating 2 things. One is, does the market want this technology, this enabling technology? Because if we introduce you to 20 customers and they all say, no, thanks, then the market has spoken, right? It's not a good fit for our customers. But if half of them say, hey, yeah, let's do a POC, let's do a pilot, let's give it a whirl, then we go ahead and we do that with the startup, and we see the outcome, right? So if the customers are like, yeah, this created tremendous value, we love it, let's roll it out to all of our divisions.
At that point, all right, let's say if we go to POC, you're helping with implementation a little bit as well too, or?
Yeah. So it's really an all hands on deck kind of thing, because it's early stages and we're trying to figure this out. So the startup will be present. We will have consultants present as well. And usually it's a combination of their technology and us, doing the consulting side of things, and we come together.
Very cool.
To do that. And it's usually on separate paper too. So it would be, we would on our paper would be the consulting piece, and then they would just have, a sales agreement with, to do the POC or pilot or whatever directly with the customer. And there's no lock-in, there's no exclusivity to any of this. We're just trying to figure out, do our customers want this? And if they do, how does it go? Did it go well? And if it goes well, that's when we want to move them into the greater partnership, right? Where they become full-fledged partners with Slalom, and we begin to nurture that relationship. We work on go-to-market campaigns with them and all of this kind of stuff, and start rolling it out to our markets around the world. So that's the big vision for Slalom Ventures. We'll actually help get investment as well. So we're standing up a fund now, and we co-invest with partner VCs, and so we get them prepared, right? So they have some money in the bank that they can use to start, selling, right? To start delivering on the sales that we in fact are facilitating.
So if you're a B2B SaaS product, this sounds amazing. If you're manufacturing tech, this sounds like a potential great opportunity. So anyone listening in, I'll make sure I have it in the show notes for you guys to know exactly how to follow up and apply and become part of the accelerator program. But like transition.
Yeah. And it's,
go ahead. No.
It's also a little, let me point out, Hamlet, that we have customers in almost every market vertical. So manufacturing, financial services, insurance, energy, you name it, we're there. Entertainment. So as long as the solution is focused on helping, mid to enterprise type customers do something better, less expensive, faster, get into new markets and things like that, and it's oriented towards that, we're generally interested in having a chat and seeing how things shake out.
Awesome. So I want to transition a little bit. I know we talked a little bit about Slalom and kind of what you've done, it's what Slalom Ventures is all about and all of those great things. Can we talk a little bit about your cloud technology experiences? And because it seems to be a little bit intertwined as well too in some of your history that we were talking about earlier. What were some things you learned during the cloud era and that you're now kind of starting to see, as well as how does that get applied, like, let's say in today's world with what's happening with AI as well? Can you explain a little bit to me for a little bit on that? Like, what are lessons learned you took from that time period that they could be applicable for other, transformational periods of time as new technology is starting to come?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could give you my view on that. I mean, it's always difficult to look into the future, right? And there's a lot of risk in that. But I'll tell you my view. There's a pretty clear trend from the early days, let's say, system administrators installing things on servers and going into the console and doing that. And as we moved into the cloud, which was, there are clear reasons why cloud is very important, right? In terms of utilization, but flexibility, all of that kind of stuff. So that was a major transition. But one of the things that it allowed to happen was infrastructure as code, right? And then instead of system administrators going into a console, which you could still do, right, on in an EC2 instance, for example, right? But seems silly to do that, right? When you have things like Terraform or have you that can allow you to configure and create these instances on the fly very, very quickly. And what I'm seeing is a continuation of that trend. And now we're using AI, right, to help build these things. So we're seeing, when you transition from the sysadmin to infrastructure as code, right, now you have developers doing this stuff, checking in their code, right? And so you have this history and you can apply it to multiple systems. And then we started to see this no code, low code stuff, which are like moving the power into more of the business users. Now, that's been a challenge. Honestly, it hasn't really taken off in the way that a lot of people expected it, but the trend continues, right? And I think that we're going to continue to see this kind of automation, especially around one of the big challenges was security operations, right? SecOps and stuff like that. In the DevOps world, right? To try and ensure that there aren't any holes as the intruders get more and more sophisticated. And we are seeing now startups that are very much working on taking that to the next level, where not just your infrastructure, but your software development's all coming together, and people are trying with various degrees of success to harness AI and LLMs and things like that to make it easier to build stuff, to automate systems. We're seeing it in automation, we're seeing it in no code, low code, we're seeing it in infrastructure plays, but all in an environment where you have sort of built-in security and compliance kinds of stuff. As we get into a world where all of that becomes much more important and much more complex, we need these tools. And so I see that as kind of an evolution to allow us to maintain control of our environments and our systems.
Got it.
So this is a big direction that I see, and there's a lot of exciting motion going on in that area.
I mean, it seems like you've always been there as new technology has come out, and when we talked about your earlier career, probably everyone was wondering why I was asking those questions, but you were really at the edge of cutting technology as it was coming out, and you got an opportunity to play with it, understand what its capabilities are and what it could potentially do, really as a builder, right? Like you were physically building sites, and you were physically building company, you're physically building software. And as your career has transitioned, it seems like you've always done that, right? You did that with the cloud. And now even as a consultant, where you are here at Slalom Ventures, more importantly, you're looking for those types of organizations and companies as well.
Yeah.
What do you look for? I mean, that's incredible, right? Like how many years you've been doing this? You've probably have fine-tuned a pretty good solid way of pattern recognition, I'm guessing, that you could say, oh, I see something here. There's something exciting potentially here. What are those different things that you potentially look for? One. And then the second follow-up question over that, what is the technology today that really excites you?
Yeah, good questions. I'll in the first question there, I'm going to caveat my answer by saying that it's incredibly difficult to pick startups, to pick winners, let's say, right? And my belief is it's basically also like picking stocks. It's really hard, right? There are a lot of people who say that they can pick stocks better than, the S&P 500 overall index performance, right? And there's a lot of VCs out there that say they can, pick startups better than others. My personal belief is that that's a very difficult thing to do. And to me, it's all about what can you do with those startups once you've selected them. And that's why I'm so excited about Slalom Ventures, is because once we have selected those startups to invest in and to work with and to become partners, we've got over 3,000 customers to introduce them to, right? And that we have market intelligence about, that we know what problems they're trying to solve, and we can say, hey, this is a perfect solution, right? So that's the caveat, is that I think it's what you could do. That said, of course, I have my own thoughts about these things. And to me, a big predictor of success is how cleanly and concisely they can articulate their value proposition. If the company is going to rely on 3 different groups of markets to all come together and do this part and that part and this, and then that, they're incentivized this way, and it gets really complicated, and there's so many potential points of failure that it becomes hard to succeed in that situation. But if it's so simple, like if a founder is telling me, look, here's the problem, here's how we solve that problem, and there's the value that's created, and it's this many dollars that are created here, and we're asking for 8% of that, right? Like, it's so clear, and I can go, all right, well, I could think of 100 companies that want that, then that is easier to sell. And if it's easier to sell, that means that they're going to have an easier time generating revenue and so forth, right? So those are the ones that sort of make me perk up and get a little bit more excited. That said, there are complicated markets out there that companies need to deal with, and I understand that too. But it's a riskier, harder road to hoe, I would say. But that's what I
look. Awesome. So it's really, for any founders listening in, it's really having a grasp of what is the problem you're solving, how are you solving that, and what is the value that's generating for your particular customer, and what percentage of that new value creation are you getting, right? To summarize that, and which startups are able to do that clearly and are able to articulate that to you, which gives you a signal that they truly understand the problem that they're solving, more or less.
Yeah. The simpler, the better. The more simple the value proposition, easier everything goes. There's less. It's like having a car with a simple engine versus one that's really complicated. We know how well those V12s tend to work. There's a lot of points of failure there, right? So you get a real simple Kawasaki motorcycle engine. Those things, they run forever, right? Less points of failure, easier to run successfully. And I do want to say, to your point about being able to articulate it, to the listeners here, you've got to pitch. Say it 1,000 times. Tell it to everybody that you know. Practice your pitch over and over again, and it will help you to explain things in a clear way. And if you're finding that you're having trouble explaining it clearly, that's an indication that there is a problem with your business plan. Have a think about that and really do some soul searching on that, because if you can't articulate it very clearly, then after trying, then it's a good indication that there there might be some trouble lying hidden in your business plan.
Thank you, Justin. And, we're getting close to the end of our podcast. I want to kind of talk a little bit more about some personal insights as well as like you're currently sharing now. How would you, or what advice would you give potential founders to kind of stay abreast of and not get overly too excited of not the problem that they have or the technology that they have, but really stay zoned in on the customer's problem? Is there some ways you can, because I know at least what I've noticed with some of the founders that I've had an opportunity and pleasure to work with is that we get excited of the tech, right? We might sometimes lose sight of the actual value creation that's occurring. What are some advice you would give or you've taken away? Because it seems like you've always done a great job of staying focused around that, right? You did it early on in your career, and then you're doing it now, even with Slalom. So how do you keep that? Don't get too bought into the technology, but stay focused on the problem and the value creation.
Yeah, this is a classic problem, Hamlet, right? It's falling in love with the technology and trying to find it's a solution in search of a problem, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think one always, this is a tough one because there are technologists out there that just love the technology, and that's not a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be in business, you got to think about the business, which means it starts with customers, right? What's the customer problem that you're solving? And that's got to be the birth of everything. And I do believe that that's how the best businesses are built, where they're thinking in the eyes of the customers or in the hearts of the customers. And often the entrepreneurs have been there, right? They have been those customers and they know what they want, right? And so I think you got to think of it as I'm building a business here. And sometimes that's heartbreaking because you do love the technology and you over-engineer it. That's a common problem, right? You over-engineer it. Stop. And this is advice I give some people, some startups that have, dwindling resources, and they're still investing in new features where they have enough, right? They have enough to start selling. I'm like, stop spending money on development, cool as it is, fun as it is. And it is to me, right? I'm a technologist. I love that stuff. It is cool. It is fun. It is exciting, but you got to think with a business mind. You say, no, put that money into sales, put that money into marketing, close those deals. I'm not going to name names, but we all know that there are plenty of software companies out there, big software companies, where the software is not that great, right? It is not that great, but their businesses are great and thriving, and they do really well. And that's because they understand there are business leaders there that understand that here is the value. You got to follow that 80-20 rule. And, we are delivering value. And that's where we are right now. And if we spent all of our money trying to develop it and make it better and better, we're missing out on big opportunity here. And a competitor who knows better will take over if we do that. So it can be gut wrenching to do it, but it's got to stay in the mind of the customer at all times.
Well, thank you, Justin. That concludes our enlightening conversation with Justin Cohen. We traversed the diverse journey, explored the strategic insights in the present landscape of technology and venture capital. More importantly, we got an opportunity to talk about Slalom Ventures and the great program that they have for different enterprises to be able to join. The journey of learning and growth is perpetual in the realms of business and innovation, so keep exploring, keep evolving, and keep pushing the boundaries. A big thank you to Justin for sharing his journey and insights, and to all our listeners for tuning in. If you found value in the conversation, please leave us a review, and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes with industry leaders and visionaries.